How did one early baby, a silent family group chat, and 62 missed calls in a hospital cafeteria flip my whole family upside down? Why did the people who ignored us during the scariest month of our lives suddenly panic when my brother texted me, "Answer now, it's important"? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Adam, I am 35, and the night my daughter decided to come early did not feel like a special moment. It felt like a mistake in the system. One minute I was fixing a bug for a client on my laptop. The next minute my wife, Lena, stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame, the other on her stomach, and told me something was wrong. Our baby was not due for another 5 weeks. We had a plan. We had a birth class scheduled. We had a hospital bag half packed in the corner of our small living room. We did not have this. Lena said her back hurt and that she felt a strong pressure every few minutes. At first, I tried to tell her it might just be practice contractions. That is what the app said. She gave me a look that told me the app could go to hell. She said these were different. Her voice was tight, like she was trying not to panic. I opened the contraction timer app and started pressing the button each time she told me one was starting. After half an hour, the screen showed red. It said we should go to the hospital. I looked at Lena and she looked at me. She said she was scared. I told her I was too, but I said it in a calm voice because that is what I do. I sound calm even when my heart is punching me in the ribs. I grabbed the half-packed bag and started throwing things in. Socks, her robe, the tiny newborn onesies that still looked too big. I almost forgot my own clothes. I pushed my laptop aside and it crashed to the floor. For once, I did not care. In the hallway, I opened our family group chat. It was called Family All of Us. It had my parents, my brother Ryan, and then Lena's parents, Monica and David, and her younger sister Kayla. I typed fast with my thumb. I wrote that Lena was having contractions early, that we were going to the hospital, that we might need help with some things, like checking on our cat or bringing extra clothes later. I said we were scared. No one replied. I saw the little scene markers pop up under the message. Ryan's icon, then my mom's, then Kayla's. I watched the 3 dots appear like someone was typing, then disappear. Nothing came. I did not have time to be hurt. I put my phone in my pocket, took Lena's arm, and we went down the stairs. It was late, after 10. The air outside was cold and wet. Our car sat under the streetlight like a small blue box. Lena said she felt another contraction coming and grabbed my arm hard. I led her into the passenger seat and tried to buckle her in, but her hands shook and mine did too. On the drive to the hospital, I kept one eye on the road and one eye on her breathing. I kept saying small things. I told her we would be okay, that the doctors knew what they were doing, that we were in the right place. She gripped the handle above the door and nodded without speaking. Every time she had a contraction, she closed her eyes and blew air out, like she was trying to push fear away. When we pulled up to the emergency entrance, I put our hazard lights on and ran to get a wheelchair. A nurse at the desk saw us and stood up at once. She asked how far along Lena was. I told her 35 weeks. The nurse's expression changed. She pressed a button and said something into a phone, then waved us through to the elevator. In the labor and delivery room, they put monitors on Lena's stomach. I watched the line spike each time she had a contraction. The midwife said the baby's heart rate was okay for now, but that this was real labor. She said it was early, but not impossible. She said our daughter wanted to meet us sooner than planned. She smiled when she said it, but her eyes stayed serious. They asked me to sign forms, insurance forms, consent forms, papers where I had to write my name and then write it again. I signed everything they slid in front of me. My hand cramped, but I held the pen tight. I had never felt more useless and more needed at the same time. Between contractions, I checked my phone. The family chat still had no reply. A sticker from Kayla appeared, some silly dancing animal, but nothing about us going to the hospital. A few moments later, a new message from my mom came in a separate chat. She wrote that she would pray and that she wished she could drive at night, but her eyes were bad. She sent a heart. I felt relief and frustration at the same time. 2 hours later, Lena was sweating and shaking. The midwife said things were moving fast. She said the baby was small but strong. I could see Lena's fear turn into something harder, like a rock in her chest. She grabbed my wrist and told me she was sorry, that she had not finished packing, that this was all a mess. I told her it did not matter. I told her the only thing that mattered was our child breathing at the end of this. Around that time, the door opened and Monica walked in, followed by Kayla. They smelled like cold air and perfume. They were dressed as if they had been out. Monica's coat was long and beige, like something from an ad. Her hair was perfect. Kayla was scrolling on her phone even as she entered the room. Monica looked at Lena first and took her hand. She told her she was strong, that everything would be fine. Then her eyes moved to me. She looked me up and down, at my wrinkled t-shirt and the sweat on my face. She said I looked pale. She said maybe I should sit down before I fainted. I told her I was okay. My voice sounded flat but steady. I asked if she had seen the message in the family chat. She said she had seen it, yes. Then she asked why I had not called her directly. She said that a text in a group chat was not really asking for help. She said a real man would have picked up the phone and called. I did not answer that. I looked at Lena, who was breathing through another contraction. She squeezed my hand so hard I could feel the bones. Kayla walked to the other side of the bed and pulled her phone up, angling it like she was taking a picture. She told Lena to smile. The midwife told her there was no filming allowed, but she could take one quick photo. Kayla complained under her breath, but snapped one anyway, framing Lena and Monica in the shot. I was cut off at the edge, only a piece of my shoulder in the picture. Kayla smiled at the screen and said she would post it later with a caption about being there from the first moments. While the monitors beeped, Monica started to talk to the midwife. She asked questions about our insurance, about the NICU, about what would happen if the baby needed to stay. She did not look at me when she spoke. She told the midwife that Lena would come stay with her after so she could rest properly. She said our apartment was too small and too noisy for a newborn. She said she would talk to the father about it later, like I was not standing right there. The midwife gave me a quick look, as if checking that I was okay with this. I felt my jaw tighten. I said we would decide together. Monica tilted her head and gave a small laugh, like I had said something cute. The hours blurred. The baby's heart rate dipped once, and my own chest went cold. Nurses rushed in, rolled Lena on her side, adjusted things. I watched the numbers and tried to breathe. They stabilized again. The midwife told us it was okay. She said the baby was a fighter. At some point, the doctor said it was time. They told Lena to push. I held her hand and counted with her. I said the numbers every time because I needed something to hold on to. Monica stood near the wall, arms crossed, looking like she was in a meeting she had not planned to attend. Kayla sat in the chair, scrolling her phone, then looked up only when the midwife said the head was out. Our daughter came into the world small and quiet, then let out a thin cry that sliced through my chest. They held her up for 1 second, then moved fast. The doctor said she needed help breathing and would go to the NICU. We had been warned this might happen, but the words still hit like a punch. They let Lena kiss the top of the baby's head once, then took her to a warmer table. I stood frozen between my wife and my child. A nurse told me I could follow the baby, that someone else would stay with Lena. I looked at Lena and she nodded. She told me to go with our daughter. Her eyes were full of tears and something else, a kind of fierce order. In the NICU, everything was bright and humming. Tiny babies lay in clear boxes hooked up to more wires than I knew existed. Our daughter was placed in one of the incubators. They put a small mask over her face. A nurse explained things to me in a calm voice that did not match the fear in the room. She said words like oxygen support and feed tube and monitoring. I nodded like I understood. I did not. When they were sure she was stable for the moment, they let me stand near her and put my hand through the small opening. Her skin was soft and warm under my fingertip. I told her my name, even though she could not hear me. I told her she was not alone. Later, when I walked back to the labor room, Lena was propped up in bed, pale and exhausted. Monica sat on the chair near the window, scrolling through her phone. Kayla was editing photos. There were already comments popping up from her friends. I could see one line on the screen where someone wrote that it was nice she was supporting her sister every second. I told Lena that our daughter was in the NICU, but stable for now. I repeated the nurse's words, exactly how I had heard them. Lena started to cry, quiet tears that slid into her hair. I held her hand and wiped her face with my sleeve. Monica broke the silence by saying that this was what happens when stress is not managed well during pregnancy. She said Lena had worked too much and that I had let her. She said a good husband would have insisted she rest more. She said it with a tone like she was giving a lecture to a junior employee. I looked at her and felt something inside my chest go very still. I did not shout. I did not argue. I just looked at her and then looked away. I felt tired down to the bone. After a while, a nurse came in and asked everyone except one person to leave so Lena could rest. Lena told her mother and sister they could go home and come back later. Monica looked offended. She said she had driven all this way and that it was not fair to push her out. Lena repeated that she was tired. Her voice shook. In the end, Monica and Kayla left with many comments about roads and parking and how late it was. I stayed. When the room finally went quiet, I took out my phone again. There were new messages in the family group chat, but not the ones I had expected. Monica had sent a long message about the birth, written like a press release. She said that Lena had been very brave. She wrote that our daughter was early and in the NICU, but that we are here and in control. She added a photo of herself and Lena holding hands. I was not in it. Under the description of the chat, I noticed something small but sharp. The name of the group was no longer Family All of Us. It had been changed to Lena's Family. When I tapped the settings, I saw that I was no longer an admin. I was just a member, and next to my name there was a small gray icon that said Muted. The next morning in the hospital, after a few hours of broken sleep on a plastic chair, I kept thinking about that small gray word next to my name in the group chat. Muted. It was such a small thing, just an icon, but it felt like someone had shut a door in my face and smiled while doing it. It was not sudden, if I was honest. It was just the first time they had done it so openly, where I could not pretend I had misunderstood. While Lena slept, I watched the monitors and tried not to stare at my phone. I kept going back, scrolling up, reading the old messages in the chat. For anyone else, it might have looked normal. Birthday wishes, jokes, holiday plans, pictures of food. But now, seeing it all at once, I could see a pattern I had tried not to see before. When Lena and I first met, it had been easy. We were at a training workshop none of us wanted to attend. She sat in the front row and asked questions. I sat near the back with my laptop half closed, trying not to be noticed. During a break, we started talking. She said I seemed calm. I said she seemed alive in a way I had not felt in a long time. She laughed and said that was dramatic. I did not argue. Months later, when I met her family for the first time, Monica greeted me like she was hosting a job interview. Their house was big and bright, white walls and glass everywhere, like a magazine. There was a smell of lemon cleaner and something in the oven. Monica took my coat and looked at the label before hanging it up. She smiled and told me I looked solid. She said it in a way that sounded like a compliment and a measurement at the same time. David shook my hand and asked where I worked. When I explained that I was in IT project management, he nodded and said that at least it was stable. Kayla looked up from her phone long enough to say Lena could do better or worse, and that I seemed nice. Everyone laughed. Back then, I did not mind the jokes. I thought they were just trying to get used to me. I was a quiet man dating their loud, bright daughter. It made sense that they used humor to check my reactions. I told myself that. When Lena and I moved in together, we chose a small apartment in a neighborhood that was not fancy but safe. I liked it. The rooms were cramped but warm. The windows were old but let in good light. We could afford it on my salary without help. That mattered to me. Then property prices jumped, and suddenly Lena's friends were all talking about owning, not renting. Monica invited us to dinner one evening and brought out a folder. She said she had a surprise. She told us she was willing to give us money for a down payment on a better apartment, one closer to her part of town. On paper, it was generous. I knew we could not save that much anytime soon. Lena was excited, her eyes shining. Monica talked about how it would be a wise investment, how it would give the baby a better start when we decided to have kids one day. She spoke as if this decision had already been made. I asked a few questions, quiet ones. I asked how the money would work, if it was a loan or a gift. Monica said it was a gift, of course, and that we did not need to worry about details. She said she just wanted her daughter to have what she deserved. When I mentioned writing that down somewhere, she laughed lightly and said she was not a bank. She was a mother. Later, at home, I still felt uneasy. I brought it up with Lena. I told her I did not want her mother to feel like she owned part of our home, that it might be complicated later. Lena said I was overthinking it. She said Monica could be controlling sometimes, but that she really did mean well. In the end, I did not push hard. The idea of a bigger place and some relief for Lena's commute was too tempting. We took the money. I dealt with the mortgage paperwork. Monica dealt with the real estate agent, the decorator, even the movers. She told anyone who would listen that she had bought her daughter a home. When people praised her, she never corrected them. I noticed, but I did not say much. I told myself it was just her way. Small things changed after that. At family dinners, Monica would make jokes about my apartment, then smile and add that of course it was ours too. She would tease me about being lucky to have her support since my own parents were just simple people. She liked to say that Lena had married down in status but up in stability. She framed it as a sweet joke. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, even though each word felt like it was sliding under my skin. There were other moments. The time Lena and I disagreed in front of her parents about a vacation plan, and Monica took Lena aside afterward. They spoke quietly in the kitchen. When they came out, Lena told me we would do what her mother suggested because it made more financial sense. The time Kayla filmed a fake argument between Lena and me for a social media skit, and Monica told her followers that men like me were good for bills, but not for excitement. She claimed it was just content. I watched strangers comment below the video, calling me boring, weak, safe. They did not know me, but they were sure. It was a long, slow drip. A comment here, a small decision there. None of it was enough to start a war. Together, they built a picture. I was the practical man in the background, the one who held things up while better, louder people had the spotlight. It did not bother me every day. I had my work, my own friends, my own family. But each time, I felt my role in Lena's family shift a little more toward helpful accessory and away from equal. Sitting by the NICU window days after the birth, I realized how much of that tension had prepared the ground for what was happening now. In the NICU, the rules were clear. Only 2 visitors at a time. Hands washed up to the elbows, phones silent. The babies did not care who had more money, better clothes, more followers. They cared about oxygen and warmth. The nurses cared about who actually showed up. I was there every morning and every night. I learned the sound of each alarm. I knew which beeps meant a monitor had slipped and which ones meant something serious. I learned how to place my hand gently on my daughter's back without disturbing the lines. I whispered to her in a quiet voice, telling her about our apartment, about the plant by the window, about the cat who would probably be scared of her at first. It was useless information for a tiny baby with tubes in her nose, but it helped me breathe. Monica and Kayla visited the NICU too, but in a different way. They would sweep in with bright coats and expensive coffee cups. They would talk loudly in the hallway about how strong they were for handling this. They would hover at the glass and make dramatic comments about how small the baby was. When nurses asked them to lower their voices, they looked offended. More than once, I heard Monica introduce herself to staff as the person who was holding everything together. She would say that Lena was fragile, that she herself was the organized one, that she was used to running a business and making quick decisions. She would talk about me in the third person, as if I were not there. She would describe me as kind but overwhelmed, or nice but more of a behind-the-scenes type. Each phrase chipped away at me in front of people who were writing notes and charts. One evening, as I washed my hands at the NICU sink, I heard Monica in the hall telling a nurse that our apartment was not a good place for a preterm baby. She said it was too small and near a noisy street. She said Lena and the baby should stay with her for a while, that she had a proper guest room and cleaning staff. The nurse glanced at me, eyebrows raised, as if to check whether that was something we had agreed on. I told her we had not discussed anything like that yet. The nurse nodded slowly and said decisions would be made with both parents present. It felt surreal. I was right there, in the hospital every day, but Monica spoke as if I were some distant relative with visiting rights. She had always talked like that in smaller ways. Now, with the crisis, she was just louder. At the same time, my own family tried to support us in quiet ways. My parents sent food deliveries to our apartment because they could not drive at night. Ryan texted to ask for updates and offered to help with any paperwork if things got complicated. But they lived farther away, and they did not fill the room with their voices like Lena's family did. In this space, volume often won over truth. A few days into the NICU routine, I had to go home for a couple of hours to grab more clothes and clear out spoiled food from the fridge. The apartment felt strange, like a set from a life that had paused mid-scene. The half-finished baby preparations were everywhere. The crib still held folded blankets and unopened packages. A stack of parenting books sat on the table, untouched. I fed the cat, opened a window, and sat down on the couch with my phone. I told myself I would just check messages quickly and then go back to the hospital. Of course, I opened the family group chat first. There were dozens of new messages. While I had been at the hospital all day, the family had been busy in their own way. Monica had shared updates with relatives, talking about how stressful it all was. She wrote about how she barely slept, how she had to manage her clinics and her daughter's crisis at the same time. People praised her in the comments, told her she was strong and amazing. There were photos from the hospital corridors. Kayla had posted a picture of herself holding a coffee cup, with Lena's ward sign blurry in the background. The caption said she was there every single day for my sister and my tiny niece. In the picture, I was in the far background, at the end of the hallway, talking to a nurse. You would not know it was me unless you already knew my shape. As I scrolled, a new message popped up from Monica near the bottom. It was longer, like a speech. She said that no matter what happened, the baby would grow up safe and stable because we will make sure she has a real home, not just that small box apartment Adam rents. She added a laughing emoji, as if it was a harmless joke. Below it, Kayla replied that she agreed and that their house was big enough for all 3 girls. Someone else added heart emojis. No one said anything about me. I stared at those lines, feeling something cold settle in my chest. It was not like they had hit me once with a cruel sentence. It was more like they had been lightly tapping the same spot for years, and now the surface had finally cracked. I noticed then that Ryan had reacted to Monica's message with the angry red emoji. A moment later, a private text from him popped up on my screen. He wrote that we needed to talk about what exactly Lena's parents thought they were doing. As I watched, 3 dots appeared in the group chat. Someone was typing again. When the 3 dots stopped moving in the family chat, a long message from Monica appeared. She wrote that she was exhausted from running between the clinics and the hospital, that she was doing everything she could, that Lena was lucky to have such a strong mother. She also added a line about how some people could not handle stress and needed others to take charge. She did not write my name, but she did not have to. I could feel where those words were aiming. I sat on our couch and stared at the screen. The cat jumped up next to me and pushed his head against my hand. I stroked him without looking. A part of me wanted to answer in that chat, to write a long message about who had been in the NICU at 6 a.m, who had been filling out forms, who had been sleeping on plastic chairs. Another part of me knew that anything I wrote there would be twisted into another story about me being emotional or defensive, so I did nothing. I put the phone face down on the table, finished my tasks in the apartment, and went back to the hospital. The days blurred together after that. They had a rhythm: wake up stiff from the chair in Lena's room, wash, walk to the NICU, stand by the incubator, meet with doctors, answer basic questions, repeat. Sometimes the rhythm got broken by alarms or new tests. Every time the monitors beeped in a different way, my heart dropped into my stomach. Lena was recovering slowly. Her body hurt, and her emotions swung like a pendulum. Sometimes she cried without warning, blaming herself for the early birth. Sometimes she stared at the ceiling like she was not in the room at all. I tried to be an anchor for her. I reminded her that the doctors had said it was not her fault. I repeated that our daughter was strong. I said these things over and over, partly for her and partly for myself. Monica's presence in the hospital grew in a different way. She arrived with fresh makeup and perfect clothes, even on days when nobody else had slept. She brought small gifts for the nurses, expensive chocolates and coffee, and told them she knew how hard their work was. She liked to stand in the hallway and tell other relatives about how she was managing everything. She turned our crisis into another stage. The first time I noticed something truly strange was in a small family meeting the staff arranged. A neonatal doctor, a nurse, and a hospital social worker named Ms. Torres asked to speak with us in a tiny consultation room. They wanted to explain the baby's progress and the plan for the next week. Lena sat next to me in a wheelchair. Monica stood behind her with a hand on her shoulder, as if she were the main support. David was at work that day. Kayla had not come. I was tired but ready to listen. I thought this meeting was just about medical information. The doctor talked calmly about weight, lung development, feeding tubes. I listened and nodded. Then Ms. Torres shifted the conversation to home life. She said that when premature babies went home, it was important to know what support the parents had. It sounded like a routine question, but her eyes were on me in a careful way. Monica answered before I could. She said that Lena would come stay at her house after discharge, that the baby would be with them most of the time, that I worked a lot and had a long commute, so it made sense. She said her home was bigger, cleaner, and better for a fragile baby. I felt my stomach tighten. I told Ms. Torres that Lena and the baby would go back to our apartment, that I would take some time off work, that my job was flexible. I said we appreciated help, but that we wanted to be together as a family. Monica gave a little laugh and said that I was being sweet but unrealistic. She said that I did not understand how hard it was to care for a preterm infant. She told Ms. Torres that she was used to managing staff and complex situations, that she could make decisions when others froze. Her tone turned me from a father into a problem to be managed. Ms. Torres looked between us, her eyebrows slightly drawn. She asked very calmly if there was any formal arrangement in place about who would make medical decisions if something happened. I said there was not, that Lena and I had not expected any of this, but that we were married and I was on the birth certificate. Monica added that, of course, we would all work together, but that someone needed to be the main contact, someone stable and available. She did not use the word guardian, but the idea hung in the air. After the meeting, Ms. Torres asked to speak with me alone for a moment. Lena had been wheeled back to her room. Monica went to get coffee. In the small consultation room, Ms. Torres folded her hands and told me in a gentle voice that the hospital had already received a phone call earlier that week. She said a relative had contacted them, worried about Lena's ability to cope, and had asked theoretical questions about temporary guardianship and decision-making if Lena became too unwell and the father could not handle things. She did not say Monica's name, but she did not need to. There was only one person in this building who liked to describe herself as the only competent adult in every situation. I felt a strange calm wash over me then. It was like a switch turning in my head, not to rage, but to a kind of cold attention. I asked Ms. Torres what the hospital had done. She said they had taken notes and explained the legal position, that they could not simply hand over authority like that when both parents were present and involved. She said they had also made a note in the file that the father was at the baby's bedside every day. I thanked her. My voice sounded normal, but inside something had shifted. If Monica was willing to call the hospital and plant doubts about me now, while the baby was still in the incubator, then this was not just about jokes or posts. This was about control. Later that afternoon, Lena fell asleep after a painful session of trying to pump milk. The nurse dimmed the lights. I told Lena I would go to the cafeteria for a quick meal and then come back. She nodded in a heavy, exhausted way and drifted off. The hospital cafeteria was bright and loud in a tired way. The floor was dull, the chairs were hard, and the food smelled like something that had been sitting under lamps all day. I took a tray, picked up a sandwich I could not taste, and sat near a window. Outside, the sky was gray and low. I realized then that my phone had been on silent since morning. I took it out of my pocket and turned the sound back on. The screen lit up. There were so many missed call icons that I could not see the end of the list. When I opened the call log, the number made my throat tighten. 62 missed calls. Most were from my brother Ryan. There was also one new message from him. It was short. He had written that I needed to answer now, and that it was important. Seeing that word important from someone who did not use it lightly made my hands shake. I stepped away from the tables and went toward a quieter corner near some vending machines. I called Ryan back. He picked up almost before the first ring finished. His voice was tense. He asked if I was okay, if Lena was okay, if the baby was still stable. I told him they were, as far as I knew. Then I asked him why he had called so many times. He took a breath and told me that the hospital's legal department had contacted his office. Ryan worked in family law. I knew that, of course, but I had never expected it to mix with my private life like this. He said that earlier that day, an older woman named Monica had tried to file some kind of emergency paperwork. She had come in very sure of herself, saying that her daughter had just had a preterm baby, that the father was barely present, that someone needed to act quickly to protect the child. Ryan said the hospital did not process her request the way she wanted. They had refused to make her the main contact, and they had flagged the situation because their own notes did not match her story. They had checked who the father was, seen my last name, and wondered if there was any link to Ryan's firm, since we shared a surname and city. When one of the legal staff realized Ryan was my brother, they reached out to him to ask if he thought I needed support. I listened in silence, my back against the cool wall. Ryan said that the hospital had also sent over copies of internal notes. He told me that in those notes, staff had written that the father, meaning me, was present every day at all hours. He said they had recorded that the grandmother was emotional and demanding, and that her version of events did not match what they saw. Then Ryan's tone changed. He stopped sounding like my brother and more like a lawyer. He said that this was serious, that Monica was not just talking, she was trying to set a paper trail. He told me that from this point on, I needed to save everything. He said to keep screenshots of messages, notes of conversations, anytime she mentioned taking the baby or questioned my ability to care for her. He reminded me that as Lena's husband and the baby's father on the birth certificate, I had strong rights, but that people like Monica often tried to push past rights by creating stories before anyone else could speak. He said that if I stayed calm and collected proof, the law would be on my side. He also said that if I let things slide because I did not want conflict, I might regret it later. I told him I understood. My voice sounded strange in my own ears, level and flat. He asked if I wanted him to come to the hospital that evening. I said not yet. I said I needed to think and to watch a little longer. That was the truth. I also knew that if Ryan appeared now in his suit and serious face, Monica would sense that something was happening and change her behavior. When the call ended, I stood there for a long moment. The vending machine next to me hummed. Somewhere behind me, a tray clattered. Life continued in its normal hospital rhythm, but for me, the air felt different. I opened my phone again. I went to the photo gallery and touched the plus sign to create a new album. My thumb hovered over the screen. I thought about what to call it. In the end, I typed a simple name for Ryan. Then I opened the family group chat and scrolled up to the messages about my small box apartment and about giving the baby a real home without me. My finger tapped the screenshot button once, then again and again as the new album started to fill. When I started the album on my phone, it felt strange, like I was doing something sneaky. I was not the kind of person who kept receipts on people. For most of my life, I had survived by assuming good intentions and ignoring sharp edges. But after the call with Ryan and the conversation with Ms. Torres, I understood something simple and hard. If Monica was already trying to build a story on paper, I could not keep living only in feelings. I needed my own record. I began with the obvious things. I took screenshots of the messages where Monica talked about giving the baby a real home away from my small apartment. I captured Kayla's comments about there being space at their place for all 3 girls. I scrolled back months and caught older jokes about Lena marrying down in status, but up in usefulness, about me being the man for bills, not big decisions. Each image slid into the new album with a soft little click. Back at the hospital, I noticed details I had ignored before. When Monica told a nurse that I was not good with stress and needed others to take charge, I later wrote the date, time, and rough words into the Notes app on my phone. When a nurse told me that the hospital had seen me there every day, I wrote that down too and added her first name. I did not record anyone secretly, I just collected what had already been said in front of me. A few days after the call from Ryan, the hospital arranged another short meeting, this time with someone from patient relations. His name was Mr. Coleman, a calm man with glasses and a tired smile. He sat with me in the same consultation room where Ms. Torres had spoken to me. He told me, in a low, measured voice, that the hospital took family conflicts seriously, especially when they touched on guardianship or medical decisions. He explained that they had a file on every patient, and that sometimes they added notes about family dynamics, if those dynamics could affect care. He did not read from the file, but he described its general shape. He said that in this case, the notes showed a consistent presence from both parents and some tension with a grandmother who seemed to want more control than was appropriate. He asked if I wanted to file a formal complaint, or if I preferred they only document what had already happened and keep an eye on things. I told him I needed to think. Inside, I already knew the answer, but I was learning to move slowly, to collect first and act later. Before I left, he told me that if I ever needed copies of certain parts of the file, there were official ways to request them. I memorized those words and put them in my mental drawer of future tools. Later that week, Ryan insisted we meet in person. He said he could come to the hospital, but I chose to go to his office for a short time while Lena's parents were visiting the NICU. There was something important about seeing him in his own space, with his papers and books around him. It reminded me that I was not alone in this, even if I felt like it inside the hospital halls. Ryan's office was simple, not the big, glossy kind Monica liked to show off. The waiting room had old chairs and a soft smell of coffee and paper. In his small conference room, he sat across from me with a legal pad. He did not look like my older brother in that moment. He looked like a man who dealt with families in trouble every day. He asked me to explain everything from the beginning. I talked quietly, starting with the early labor, the group chat silence, the renaming of the family chat, the NICU visits, Monica's comments, the call from the hospital, and her trip to the legal department. I did not dramatize anything. I told it like a list of facts. Ryan wrote short notes, mostly dates and names. When I finished, he leaned back and said that none of this surprised him. He said he had seen many versions of this story in his work, a loud relative trying to shape the narrative around a crisis before anyone else could speak. Then he reminded me of something I had almost forgotten in all the chaos, our father's habit of planning. My father had always been a quiet man, even more quiet than me. He had not had much money, but he had believed in paperwork. Wills, small insurance policies, small savings accounts with notes on them. After he died, Ryan had been the one who handled most of that. Ryan told me that our father had set up a small trust years ago, a kind of savings structure that would activate when the first grandchild in the family was born. The money was not huge, but it was not nothing. It was enough to help with a first home, or education, or medical needs. Our father had named me as trustee, since I was the older child planning to have kids sooner at the time. I sat there, surprised and a little ashamed that I had not remembered this. Ryan said that there had been no reason to think about it before, that life had been normal then. He said that now, however, that structure could matter. As trustee, I would have power over how and when that money was used. I could set conditions to be sure it helped my child without giving control to people who did not respect my role as a father. When he said that, something clicked in my mind. Monica believed that money was the main tool in the world. She had used it to shape so many things. Our apartment, holidays, Lena's habits. It was like a rope she wrapped around every situation. The idea that there was money meant for my daughter that Monica did not control and could not reach unless I allowed it felt like an invisible weight in my hand. Ryan did not tell me exactly what to do with the trust. He simply laid out options in simple terms. He said we could adjust some things, tighten who had access, add clear notes about guardianship and involvement. He also reminded me that this was not about revenge for the past jokes. It was about protection for my child's future. That distinction mattered to me. We talked then about the hospital. He explained the formal complaint process. He said that Monica's attempt to bypass me and talk about guardianship could be documented in a way that showed she had tried to undermine my rights. He stressed that I did not have to create drama in the hallways. The paper and systems could do the work quietly if I used them well. When I left Ryan's office, I did not feel powerful. I still felt tired and scared. But now, under the fear, there was a new layer, a knowledge that I had tools I had never thought about before. I did not have Monica's loud voice or her social media followers. I had legal rights, a careful brother, and a dead father's love folded into some lines of text in a trust document. On the way back to the hospital, I stopped at a small cafe near the metro. It was one of those plain places with scratched tables and a single barista. I needed a moment in a room that did not smell like antiseptic. While I waited for my coffee, my colleague Jared called. Jared had been covering some of my work tasks. He had noticed my strange hours and slow replies. He asked if everything was really okay. I told him in simple sentences that the baby was early and in the NICU, that Lena was recovering, that her mother was being intense. I did not go into detail, but I did mention that Lena's mother had tried to say I was barely present and had gone to the hospital legal staff to ask about guardianship. There was a pause. Then Jared said that this sounded insane. He said that everybody in the office knew I was the most reliable person alive, and that if someone was going to show up every day, it would be me. He added that if I ever needed a written statement about my character or stability, he would sign it without blinking. His words did not change anything official, but they grounded me. They reminded me that outside Monica's bubble, I still existed as a full person, not just as a weak outline in someone else's story. Back at the hospital, I went straight to see my daughter. She was a little stronger now, needing slightly less oxygen. The nurse showed me how to put my hand in through the incubator opening and rest it gently on her back so she could feel my warmth. I told her, in a low voice, that her grandfather had left her something and that her uncle was helping me make sure it stayed safe. I knew she could not understand, but speaking the words made them more real for me. Monica kept behaving as if nothing had changed. She continued to tell nurses she was the one holding everything together. She continued to write long posts in the family chat about our fight and our efforts, using we in a way that left me out. But now, each time she spoke, I did not just feel hurt. I also measured her words, mentally labeling them as potential evidence or noise. One afternoon, while Monica and Kayla were at the hospital posting pictures from the corridor, Lena asked me softly if I was angry with her family. She looked fragile and guilty, like she was responsible for every harsh word they said. I told her I was not angry with her. I said I was tired of being treated like I was not there. I did not share every detail about Ryan and the trust, but I told her that I was talking to my brother about how to protect our daughter and our life together. I added that I would not do anything behind her back, but that I also could not let her mother decide everything. Lena nodded slowly. She said she knew her mother could be too much. She also said that she had always trusted Monica to handle things because that was how it had always been. I reminded her gently that we were building our own family now, and that sometimes that meant saying no to old habits. She did not argue. She just took my hand and squeezed it, as if saying that she understood at least part of what I meant. Days turned into weeks. Our daughter gained weight gram by gram. The doctors began to talk about discharge dates, about oxygen levels, about when we could finally take her home. The word home became a battle in my mind. And for me, it was our small apartment with its crooked shelves and plant by the window. For Monica, it was her large house with polished floors and staff. Around that time, Monica and Kayla started talking about a baby naming ceremony. In our families, it was common to have a gathering a few weeks or months after the birth. Once things were safe, to welcome the child, say prayers, and choose a name in front of everyone. Initially, Lena and I had imagined something small at our place or at a modest restaurant. Now Monica had a different vision. She announced in the group chat that she had reserved a private event room at a hotel attached to the hospital complex. She wrote that it would be perfect, that everyone could see the baby safely, that doctors would be nearby, that it would be a classy event. She mentioned a microphone and a small stage, speeches, and special moments. It sounded less like a family welcome and more like a corporate event launch. Lena looked at the message and bit her lip. She told me that she was tired and did not really want a big thing like that, but she also said she could not handle a fight about it right now. I understood. Sometimes survival means choosing battles. I told her we could let Monica have her hotel room, but that the baby and we would still go home with me afterward. I said it in a quiet, firm voice. Lena nodded. That night, back at the apartment for a short break, I sat at our dining table with my laptop and a notebook. I opened my calendar app to block time for hospital meetings and work calls. As I typed, 2 new entries appeared, shared from Ryan's account. The first was early in the morning on the same day as the ceremony, a meetup at a local bank and notary office. The second was in the late afternoon. Baby naming, hotel event room, added from the family chat link. The two events sat on the same line of the digital day, like bookends. Morning, quiet paperwork. Evening, public performance. I stared at them for a long time. Then I picked up my pen and, in my paper notebook, circled that date in dark ink. The morning of the naming ceremony, I woke before the alarm. The sky outside our bedroom window was still gray. Lena was asleep, breathing in little uneven waves, an empty space beside her where the baby's bassinet would go once she finally came home. For a moment, I just lay there and listened. The apartment was quiet. No monitors, no beeping, no footsteps in the hall outside our hospital room. Just the old pipes ticking and a car passing in the street below. It felt almost like our life before everything broke open, except now there was a date circled in my notebook and a weight in my chest that had not been there before. I got up slowly and moved around the room, careful not to wake Lena. I made coffee, though my stomach didn't want it. I checked the calendar on my phone again, even though I knew what it said. The two appointments still sat on that day, one on top of the other. 9 a.m., bank or notary with Ryan. 5 p.m. Baby naming ceremony, hotel event room. Between them, a blank stretch that was supposed to hold relief or panic or both. Lena woke while I was getting dressed. She watched me button my shirt from the bed, hair messy, eyes swollen from another light night. She asked where I was going so early. I reminded her about the bank appointment. She frowned a little, confused for a second, then nodded. She knew in basic terms that I was talking to Ryan about paperwork to protect the baby, but I had spared her the details. She was already carrying enough. Still, I did not want her to feel shut out. It's about the trust and some other protections, I said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. Stuff my dad set up. Ryan just wants to put everything in order before she comes home. For us, not against you. Lena looked at me for a long moment. Then she reached over and took my hand. I trust you, she said quietly. Just don't let my mother push you around anymore. Please. Not for her. Not for me. Do it for our daughter. I squeezed her hand back and promised that was exactly what I was doing. Then I kissed her forehead and left. The bank and notary were in a low office building near the center of town. Nothing fancy, just glass doors and tired plants. Ryan was waiting for me in the small lobby, wearing his usual slightly worn suit. He looked like he had been up late, but his eyes were clear. We went into a little meeting room with a square table and a humming air vent. There was a stack of papers on the table already, but I forced myself not to lean forward and read them line by line. This part, I had decided, I would leave to Ryan and his calm, legal brain. He had read every word 3 times. I had read the summary once. That was enough for now. Ryan explained again in simple language what we were doing. He talked about our father's trust and how it was now clearly directed to support my daughter's needs and our household, not anyone else's plans. He mentioned guardianship preferences if something ever happened to me and Lena together. He described how the records from the hospital about Monica's attempt to bypass me were being attached to a complaint and stored in a safe place. We're not starting a war, he reminded me. We're closing doors before someone tries to walk through them. The notary came in, a quiet woman with a neat bun. She checked my ID, slid the documents toward me one by one, placed small sticky arrows where I needed to sign. My hand moved across the paper slowly. Each signature felt heavier than the last, not because of the ink, but because of what it meant. I was no longer just reacting to Monica's stories. I was writing my own in a way that people in offices and courtrooms would respect. When we were done, the notary stamped the pages with loud, solid presses. Stamps, dates, signatures, no drama. Just marks that would outlive anyone's social media post or sarcastic comment in a group chat. Ryan gathered a slim set of copies for me and put them in a plain folder. The originals would go where they needed to go. Banks, records, safe storage. He tapped the folder. Keep this with you today, he said. Not to wave around, just to remind yourself who actually has structure behind him. And I nodded and slipped the folder into my bag. It was light, but it felt like carrying a small, steady stone. On the way out, Ryan asked if I wanted him at the ceremony. We had talked about it before. I had told him I didn't want to turn it into a visible legal battle. This was supposed to be a day to welcome my daughter, not a courtroom. I'll be nearby, he said when I hesitated. You don't have to look for me. Just know I'm around. I thanked him. It was enough. The hours between the bank and the ceremony felt strange. I went to the hospital, as usual. I checked on my daughter, watched her tiny chest rise and fall with fewer wires than before. I held Lena's hand and told her how beautiful our baby looked today. We talked quietly about the name we had chosen, the one we would finally say out loud in front of people who had acted like they owned her. Monica came by Lena's room in the early afternoon, full of energy. She wore a pale dress and jewelry that caught the light. She talked fast about the schedule, the caterers, the guests. She reminded us what time the photographer would be there, what order the speeches would take. "Our side of the family is really excited," she said, standing at the foot of the bed like a host before a live show. "We've all been through so much. Tonight we celebrate properly. Everyone needs to see that we handled this like adults." She said our side of the family without even noticing it. I heard it clearly. "Adam will say something too," Lena said, surprising me. Her voice was soft but certain. "He's her father." Monica paused, just for a second. Then she smiled, wide and smooth. "Of course," she said. "If he wants to add a few words at the end, that could be sweet. But let's keep it short, okay? We don't want to bore people with too many details." I felt my jaw tighten, but kept my face calm. I told her I would be brief. I did not tell her that I had spent nights mentally editing my words down to the cleanest, sharpest version possible. Later, while Lena rested and nurses checked on the baby, I went home once more to change. I put on my one good dark suit and a plain white shirt. No fancy tie, just something simple. In the mirror, I looked like a quiet office worker about to attend a conference. That was fine. I did not need to look powerful. I needed to be prepared. Before I left the apartment, I opened the For Ryan album on my phone. It was bigger now. Screenshots of the group chat, notes about Monica's calls, small photos from the NICU hallway where she posed while I stood in the background. I closed the album and slid the phone into my pocket, feeling its shape next to the folder in my bag. On the ride to the hotel, my stomach twisted. I was not afraid of Monica shouting at me. I had heard her shout before. I was more worried about my own hands shaking when I spoke, about my voice cracking. I reminded myself that this was not about winning an argument. It was about correcting a story, about placing my daughter and myself where we actually belonged. The hotel attached to the hospital was the kind of place built to look expensive and neutral at the same time. Polished floors, quiet staff, bland artwork. The event room was down a hallway lined with framed photos of smiling families at weddings and conferences. As I approached, I could already hear the low hum of voices, laughter, clinking glasses. The sound wrapped around me like a warm, fake blanket. The door to the event room was open. Inside, I could see soft lights, round tables, white cloths, and a small platform at the front with a microphone on a stand. A banner with our daughter's name in soft colors hung near the stage. Monica had done her work thoroughly. Near the entrance, a cousin of Lena's was already raising her phone, filming guests as they came in. Her eyes moved over me and then sharpened, like she had just found a new shot to add to her story. "Adam's here," she called to someone inside. "Now we're all complete." People turned to look at me. Some smiled, some just stared. I could feel phones being lifted, screens glowing. In this age, nothing really happened if it wasn't recorded. I straightened my shoulders and stepped through the doorway, feeling the folder press against my side and the phone heavy in my pocket. Monica stood near the front, a glass in her hand, talking to a group of relatives. As I walked in, the microphone on the little stage gave a short crackle, and someone tapped it to test the sound. "Okay, everyone," I heard a voice say over the speakers, bright and smooth. "Let's get started with a few words from the grandmother who held everything together." Monica stepped onto the small platform like it was a stage she'd owned for years. She rested one hand lightly on the microphone and smiled at the room, soaking in the attention. She began talking in her calm, polished voice. She spoke about our journey, our strength as a family, and how we managed the crisis with clear leadership. Every sentence used "we" the way someone uses a glass door, transparent from one side, reflective from the other. In her version of things, she was the pillar, the spine, the decision-maker. Lena was delicate and grateful. I was a shadow that hovered somewhere nearby. People nodded politely. A few recorded. Kayla beamed as if she were watching a live episode of her own channel. Then Monica lifted a small set of papers from the table beside her. "I prepared something special," she said, her voice bright. "Just a simple document for after the ceremony. Nothing dramatic. It's about making sure our little girl has the safest, most stable environment possible. I'll walk Lena through it later. Very standard." I knew exactly what she meant. She was trying again. Another version of the guardianship angle, dressed up in nicer language. Lena's eyes flicked to mine, uneasy. That was the moment I stepped forward. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't touch the microphone. I just stood at the front of the room and said, "I'd like to speak as her father." The room quieted. A few phones lifted higher. Monica gave a slow, tight smile. "Of course, Adam. Just a few words, all right? We're keeping things light." I nodded once. Then I looked at the crowd. Relatives, distant cousins, co-workers, people who had only heard Monica's version. "I want to thank everyone who actually helped us during the hardest month of our lives," I began. "The nurses who stayed late, the doctors who answered every question, and the people who checked in without turning our situation into a public performance." A ripple went through the room. People shifted in their seats. I lifted my phone, not high, not dramatic, and opened the album. I also want to share something important. While our daughter was fighting in the NICU, someone tried to tell the hospital I wasn't present. Someone tried to file emergency guardianship by claiming I couldn't handle caring for my own child. Gasps. Heads turned. Monica's smile froze in place. "I have the hospital notes," I continued. "Every logged day I was there, every call they received, and the written summary from patient relations confirming that the claims were false. I didn't waive the papers. I didn't need to. The words did the work." Monica stepped forward fast, her voice sharp. "Adam, this is not the place." But I kept going, calm and steady. "I also have the messages," I said. "The ones where people talked about taking the baby to a real home, the ones mocking our apartment, the ones planning a future without me. Every screenshot is saved." Kayla lowered her phone slowly, her face draining of color. "And," I said, "there's the matter of the trust my father created for his first grandchild. I am the trustee. After reviewing the circumstances with legal guidance, the trust now has clear conditions. It supports our child and her parents. Only. No involvement, access, or influence for anyone who attempted to undermine my parental role or interfere with our decisions." Monica's mouth opened, then closed. Her glass trembled in her hand. I turned toward Lena. "Our daughter comes home with us. To our home. Not anywhere else." Lena nodded through tears. Quiet, but firm. Ryan had entered the room at some point and was standing near the back. Hands folded, a neutral expression on his face. Just seeing him there anchored me. I ended simply, without anger. "I am her father. Lena is her mother. And from this point forward, every decision about her life comes from us, not from anyone who tried to take control." Silence spread across the room like a slow wave. Then whispers. Chairs scraping, people avoiding Monica's eyes. She tried to speak, some mixture of excuse and indignation, but no one moved toward her. Even her closest relatives stepped back. Her face flickered with something I had never seen in her before, genuine shock at losing the center of the story. I picked up the folder from my bag, now light because everything inside was already decided, and walked toward Lena and the baby. We left the room together. The last thing I heard behind us was the microphone clicking off and the sound of Monica's voice fading into stunned, powerless silence.